3 years ago, I shared the house with 2 friends. I was 22 at the time. It wasn't a bad place, but it wasn't nice either. Just affordable and close enough to work. When I first moved to Texas for college, my parents helped me out with my finances, but soon I had to find a job so that I could afford my lifestyle. So I started working shifts at a local restaurant. Anyways, back to the story. It was New Year's Eve. Everyone expects that night to feel special, but for us, it didn't. We weren't throwing a party. We didn't invite anyone over. We were all tired and honestly just wanted the year to be over. So that night, the three of us were home. Alex, Mika, and me. As the night progressed, we decided to get together to watch an anime that we were so obsessed by back then. It was our way of enjoying the holidays. It was around 10:30 p.m. I was in the kitchen preparing late dinner for myself to eat while watching. Alex was stretched out on the couch and Mika was scrolling on his phone as much as I can remember. Nothing felt off. Everything was just as it should be. Then Alex said, "Since when is that light on?" I turned around and looked down the hallway. It was a small room at the end, basically a storage room. We barely used it. The light in there was always off. Always. I told him that I don't know and that maybe one of them had left it on. The two of them looked at each other and shook their heads. I thought that probably they have, but have forgotten it. So I just went there and turned it off. That was it. No big deal. I went back to the kitchen, grabbed my plate, and sat down with them. Outside, you could already hear some crowd noises here and there, but nothing crazy yet, just random pops in the distance. We were halfway through the episode that I noticed something that, at the time, didn't really register as important. It was quiet inside the house. Normally, you could hear the AC, the fridge, or at least some background noises. But for a moment, it felt like everything inside the house had gone silent. A few minutes later, Mika paused the episode and asked us if we can hear that. Alex immediately said no. It was weird since Mika didn't even mention what he was talking about. So I asked him, but he just shushed me to listen carefully and then shrugged. Apparently, he was just imagining sounds. Anyways, we unpaused and kept watching. Then it happened again. This time, me and Alex heard it too. A soft sound coming from the hallway, like someone was walking there. But not footsteps exactly, more like someone slowly shifting their weight on the floor, like socks dragging slightly. I muted the TV and we all listened, but as soon as the TV went mute, the sound stopped too. I wasn't scared or worried then. That place made noises all the time. It was an old house built in the 50s. If anything, I was relieved that the background noises of the house had returned. It was creepier when it was silent. But still, I got up and looked down the hallways to be sure that we didn't have an intruder. Everything looked normal. Doors were closed and the light was off, and no uninvited guests were anywhere to be seen. Around 11:30, the fireworks outside started getting louder. People yelling, cars honking, the usual New Year's stuff. It actually made the inside of the house feel even quieter. That was when Alex said, "Guys, the storage room light is on again." My first reaction wasn't fear but annoyance. I could swear that I had checked on the light twice and didn't want to get up and check it for the third time. Alex stood up and walked halfway down the hallway, but stopped and asked me to join him. He was clearly freaking out already. I don't know why, but I said okay and got up. Again, there was nothing. We checked everywhere this time to be sure, but no one was there. I told him that it's possibly a maintenance issue and just turned the light off. Then we came back to watch our show, but after that last time, none of us were really paying attention anymore. At around 11:45, we heard the footsteps again. This time, there was no question. We all froze trying to make sense of it. If one of us had moved, we would have known, and there was nowhere else that sound could be coming from. I muted the TV again, but this time the sound didn't stop. The footsteps were slow. They weren't going back and forth either. They were coming towards us. I remember thinking that if it was an intruder, they were doing a terrible job at hiding. Alex said, "Do you think someone broke in?" I wasn't sure, but since all the doors were locked, I told him no. And right after that, I said that. The sound stopped. The timing was off. We waited a little longer, then we heard something else. A very light sound coming from the front door. Someone was pulling the handle. I mean, the sound was there, but no actual movement. It was odd. Alex was the only one who took it seriously, though. He took his phone out and said, "I'm calling the police." We didn't argue with that. It seemed the only logical course of action. While Alex was on the phone, I walked closer to the hallway. Not all the way, but just enough to see the front door clearly from the corner. The door wasn't moving, and neither the handle. But I had this really strong feeling that someone was standing right in front of it. Alex told the operator that someone was inside the house. He sounded calm, but I could tell that he was forcing it. He was speaking in a low voice, basically whispering, but whoever or whatever that was inside heard it, because it was right then when the front door handle started shaking vigorously, and right after that, someone was banging on the door. The operator might have heard it through the phone because they asked Alex to confirm what that sound was. Before he could answer, the handle moved again and the door opened. No one was there. I could literally hear my own heartbeat racing in my throat. The door was opened on itself. Mika started screaming and Alex told the operator about what just happened and that we needed officers immediately. The police arrived 20 minutes later. When the lights outside flashed blue and red through the window, I finally felt like I could breathe again. They searched the entire house, every room, every closet, every storage room, the backyard, but nothing was found. One of the officers asked us if we'd been drinking or smoking. They said no. I mean, yeah, we had a beer each, but since when drinking beer makes you hear footsteps? Or since when does it make you see ghosts opening doors and turning the lights on? So they couldn't help with anything and left, while assuring us that no one was there, but if we hear or see anything again, we could still call them. Yeah, like we didn't already know that. But just as they were about to leave, one of them stopped near the front door and looked at the glass panel beside the door. He pointed at it and asked us if we know anything about the handprint. I didn't know what he was talking about, so I went closer to see. And yes, it was there. A smudged handprint, low on the glass. Usually I would have shrugged it off as one of us touching there with dirty hands without knowing. But the problem was that this handprint was small, like a child's hand. And it was on the inner side of the panel. Anyone who had left that mark was clearly inside the house. I couldn't stay there for another second. I just ran out so I could breathe. Alex and Mika took their times, but their initial reaction after realizing what has happened was exactly the same as mine. The officers said they would patrol the area and advised us to spend the night somewhere else. But since we didn't have anywhere else to go, we had to go back in after a few minutes. That night, none of us slept. We moved out not long after that and decided not to think or talk too much about it ever again. We still talk sometimes, but none of us ever bring that topic for too long. Honestly, I almost didn't write this. Even thinking about what happened to me is still painful. But I told myself that maybe putting it into words would help, because people say writing things down can make it easier to carry. This goes back about 5 years. When I was about 20, my family and I decided to move to the States, and my dad asked his friend Ted, who was already living there, to help us find a place. We've always loved nature and green spaces, so we specifically asked him to look for a house near the forest. A few months later, we finally moved to the States, and Ted took us straight to the house. I remember being genuinely impressed. It had an old, almost rustic feel, but at the same time it felt modern. It was surrounded by trees and flowers, quiet and beautiful. The house wasn't very big, but it felt warm and welcoming. With just a few basic pieces of furniture, it already felt like home. Every day, my sister, my two brothers, and I had the same routine. We'd eat breakfast outside, and after that, we'd go to a small open area nearby, surrounded by trees, and play soccer or whatever else we felt like. Then lunch, long walks through the forest, discovering random spots, dinner, and then sleep. The house and the forest were so beautiful that we didn't even care about the city. We barely explored it at all. All we wanted was to be in the woods. At the time, it felt perfect. We had no idea those peaceful days were about to turn into something else entirely. One day, my sister and I were walking out when we noticed a small wooden cabin tucked away between the trees. We were curious, so we walked over and went inside. At first, it looked empty, nothing unusual, but then my sister noticed a piece of paper. The paper was completely black, and right in the middle, there was a white rectangle with the word SS House written on it. A short distance away from the rectangle, there was a white circle with a red X drawn inside. We had no idea what it was supposed to be. A map? A drawing? Some kind of a symbol? We couldn't tell. Still, we took it home, half jokingly acting like detectives trying to figure out what it meant. For days, we kept going back to it. No matter how much we talked about it, nothing made sense. What was the SS House? What did the circle mean? And why the red X? A few days later, we invited Ted over for dinner. After we ate, my sister casually asked him if he knew anything about the SS House. He thought about it for a moment and said he didn't know what the SS stood for, but he mentioned that the people who built our house were a family called Santa. So maybe it was short for that? Then he asked where she'd seen the name. My sister lied and said that she found a piece of paper while cleaning her room that said "Welcome to SS House," and that's why she was curious. Up until that moment, only my sister and I knew about the paper. The next morning, we checked it again, this time more carefully. That's when it clicked. The white rectangle wasn't random, it was our house. The black areas around it were the forest, and the white circle with the red X marked was the small clearing where we always played soccer, the spot with fewer trees. My sister said, half serious, half joking and excited, "What if there's something buried there?" So we decided to go there and look for something, maybe even dig there. We agreed that if we found something quickly, then great, but if not, we'd call our brothers to help them. We found the place, and there was this spot that looked like it had been dug up before. You know, no grass, no nothing on it. So we started digging that exact spot, and it didn't take long. After digging just a little, we hit something solid. We were honestly expecting something interesting, something valuable even. Instead, there was only a small wooden statue about the size of a palm carved in the shape of a goat. Honestly, we were disappointed. My first thought was that we just wasted our time. My sister put the statue back in the hole and said that we should bury it again, but I stopped her. I told her that it was actually kind of nice and cute and that we should just take it home. She laughed and said, "What if it's demonic or something, huh?" I didn't believe in things like that at all. I told her to stop being dramatic. So eventually, she picked it up and we brought it home and placed it on a shelf in the living room. The area we lived in didn't have dangerous animals. No wolves, no bears, just normal stuff. You know, cats, dogs, birds. But from the moment we brought that statue home, it was like all of them disappeared. No animals, no sounds, nothing. After that, bad things started happening, one after the other. First, my father broke his leg. Then one of my brothers broke his hand. And finally, my uncle passed away. On their own, none of these things sound unusual or even related. I mean, bad things happen all the time, right? But they kept happening non-stop. Sometimes every day, sometimes it felt like every hour. What made it even stranger was this. The night before something happened, one of us would dream about it. Every single time. My sister once dreamed that our family dog's head would be injured, and the next day, it happened. Despite everything, I had started dating someone and nothing bad had happened to me yet. The rest of my family brushed everything off as coincidence. But deep down, my sister and I couldn't shake the feeling that it all came back to that statue. Then things escalated. Books would move on their own. Things wouldn't be where we left them. Small things at first, but enough to make us uneasy. Eventually, my sister and I sat everyone down and told them everything. About the statue, the paper, all of it. No one believed us. They said that we were being superstitious, that a wooden statue couldn't possibly do anything. But no matter what they said, my sister and I were convinced. We truly believed that the statue was cursed. So we started digging more about the house's history. Apparently, years ago, a family called Sansana built that house, but they fell into serious debt and couldn't pay it back. One night, one of the creditors broke into the house and set it on fire. Only the father survived. The rest of the family burned to death. That was tragic, but we couldn't find anything regarding the statue. That was when we decided to straight up just destroy it and act like it never existed. But when I went to pick it up and take the statue outside to burn it, it was gone. We searched everywhere, every room, every shelf. It was like it had disappeared into thin air. After that, things inside the house got worse. At nights, my bedroom door would open on its own. Books would shift and fall from the shelves, and every single night, I heard strange whispering sounds right next to my ears. At the time, me and my boyfriend had a horrible breakup because of his violence that I can't go into details. So at first I thought it was just me, that my mind was reacting to what I'd been through. But then I realized that it wasn't just happening to me. One morning I noticed my sister's neck was red. When I asked her about it, she said that the night before she felt like someone had been choking her in her sleep. Things like that were happening to all of us. One night, while I was sleeping, I felt something touching my shoulders. I woke up suddenly, but no one was there. Then I heard a voice, clear, cold, and terrifying. And the voice said, "Tomorrow, your brother will die." When I woke up in the morning, I immediately asked where my brothers were. One of them was home, and the other had gone to the city to run errands. I had a horrible feeling in my chest. I couldn't ignore it. So I called him. But someone else answered his phone and gave us an address to a hospital. We went to the hospital, and that day became one of the worst days of my life. My brother had died in a car accident. Losing him shattered me. It was another unbearable blow on top of everything else. We were all devastated, but also, every single day, things kept getting worse. We were also trying to find another place to live, but even that felt cursed. No matter how hard we looked, nothing worked out. Every night, fear and nightmares completely took me over. I couldn't function, I couldn't live normally anymore, and the whole family was exhausted, physically and mentally. Finally, after about a month, the statue was found. We took it straight to the fireplace and threw it in, trying to burn it, but it didn't catch fire at all. It was as if it wasn't made of wood. My sister pulled it out and tried to smash it with a stone, but nothing happened. So we decided to bury it again. But nothing improved. If anything, things got worse. Every night, I relieved the trauma I had with my boyfriend in my dreams, and then I'd wake up in the morning finding myself naked in the bed. I couldn't remember when and why I took my clothes off, but it happened consistently. My sister started having nosebleeds in her sleep. My mother, who was already broken by my brother's death, was suffering more and more every day. No matter what we tried after that, nothing helped. Eventually, we decided we had to leave the house. I truly believed we should have left much earlier. My mother, completely broken at that point, decided to act upon our suspicions about the curse. So she found a medium and asked her to visit our house. But she wouldn't even step inside. She stood right outside the door and refused to enter. When we asked her why, she said, "This house is filled with negative energy. I will not go in." We took her to the place where the statue had been buried and told her everything. When she picked up the statue, she immediately threw it away and said, "This object is deeply evil." She told us that there were no ways for destroying it, but she could help us weaken it, and then we could leave when it was vulnerable. What she told us to do sounded strange and hard to believe, but my mother insisted that we would follow every instruction. We followed everything the medium told us to do, but instead of things getting better, they became even stranger. Serious illnesses started hitting our family one after the other. My other brother developed a condition that left him temporarily paralyzed. My sister lost her hearing. And in the middle of all of this, the house itself became unbearable. Thick, dark liquids, almost like blood, would ooze out of the cracks in the wall. It was liquid gas or something, but it felt horrifying. It felt less like a house and more like hell. After 3 days of this non-stop, my mother said that until our return plans were finalized to our country, we should stay at her friend's house. Her friend was out of town for a few weeks, but had given my mother the keys to her house so she could water the plants. We asked for permission and moved there temporarily. But even there, it followed us. The same things kept happening, not as intense, but still painful and terrifying. After a few weeks, everything was finally arranged and we were ready to go back to our country. Before leaving, we returned to our house one last time to collect our belongings. That same night, my sister said that she was in severe pain. Her stomach hurt badly. My mother gave her a pill, like she always did, and told her that it was probably stress and that she'd feel better after taking it. She took the pill, but she didn't feel any better. She was awake all night, crying in pain. The next day, we took her to see a doctor. They ran several tests, examined her, and said things that sounded strange and confusing at the time. I don't remember all the details now, but the conclusion was clear. Something was wrong with her reproductive system and she needed surgery. So we were forced to stay another week. That 1 week we were forced to stay was pure torture. Things happened that were so bad I genuinely can't bring myself to describe them. The least horrible part was that every single night I had nightmares about weird creatures assaulting me and woke up in the morning without any clothes on again. Yeah, you can imagine how much worse the rest of it was. And like always, it wasn't just me. Everyone was affected. My brother would suddenly have seizures and act completely out of control, almost like he was possessed. The only person who seemed okay during that week was my sister. Nothing was happening to her in the hospital. Even on the nights I stayed with her, everything felt normal for me too. After a week, we were finally supposed to return. Our bags were packed, and we only went back to the house one last time to grab our things and leave. My sister had already had her surgery and was feeling much better. We went back, but none of it stopped. The same things kept happening, and with the same intensity. We were now basically on the other side of the world, and yet the house or the statue, I don't know, but one of them was still haunting us. My mother eventually brought in a so-called witch, hoping he could fix things. The moment he stepped into the house, he said, "There are 3 evil entities living here with you." He gave us several written prayers and told us to hang them in every room. He said that for at least 40 days, we had to avoid major sins and pray. I asked him, "What do you mean by major sins?" He said things like self-pleasure, illicit relationships, murder, and similar acts. I laughed and said, "I don't think anyone here is going to murder someone, but I can't promise anything about the rest." He looked at me seriously and said, "Don't joke about this. Your life is in danger." So we hung the prayers on the wall. My parents prayed, and the rest of us did our best not to kill anyone, and also not to have any illicit relationships. Well, almost. But just like every other time, bringing in the witch only made things worse. My father left the house in the US in the care of one of his friends so it could be sold, but no one would even get close to buying it. I know I sound like a robot repeating myself, but seriously, after that, even stranger things started happening. Sometimes I'd look at myself in the mirror and barely recognize what I saw. My face looked distorted, frightening. Other times, my sister would stand over me at night while I was asleep. In the morning, when I asked her about it, she would swear she didn't remember anything at all. It was unbearable for all of us. Slowly, we started to get used to it. At some point, we almost even accepted that this was our reality, that we were going to live with this curse for the rest of our lives. Then one day, my father's friend from the States called. He said a body had been found next to our house. We didn't want to go back to the US, but my father said that since the house was legally his and a body had been found next to it, the police would most likely want to speak with him. He went alone and came back quickly. He told us that because we hadn't been there at the time, we weren't considered suspects, so he was cleared and returned. After that, the incidents started happening less and less. Day by day, they faded, and after about a year, life slowly returned to something close to normal. I don't know why it ended. My sister believes that it was the curse that killed that one person, and that it ended with that murder. I honestly don't know what to believe. All I know is that thankfully, it stopped. That doesn't mean there were no consequences though. Even after everything ended, the damage remained. As a family, we went to therapy for years. All of us dealt with different physical and psychological issues that needed treatment. Everyone that we've ever told this story to says that we're making it up, that it couldn't possibly be real. Even you might not believe it, but this was our real life. We lived it. Every terrifying thing I've described actually happened to us, and even now, years later, the effects are still there.